Hello, and welcome to Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. Robert C. Cooper is joining us once again for part 5 of his ongoing interview series with us. We were going to go into season 2 originally, and then y'all submitted so many questions over the course of 2 days that I was like, we've got to use these for the majority of the discussion. So that's what we did. We're taking a break from going through specific episodes and just kind of easing back and going over what you, the fans, have submitted. So that's going to be the plan for this episode. Everything that's pretty much everything that's been asked is going to be by the fans in this one. So because this is a pre-recorded episode, you're more than welcome to take part in the live chat, but it's a pre-recorded show, so the moderators are not going to be taking any questions for Rob at this time. If you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It really makes it different with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show continue to grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. That's enough babbling from me. Let's go to Robert C. Cooper. Robert C. Cooper joining us for season 2 on Dial the Gate. Sir, it is such a pleasure to have you back. Thank you so much for being with us. This is a privilege.
Nice to be here. Season 2, how does that work?
Season 2. So I took a break over the summer, and so I called that season 1. We ended with 100 episodes. And it was a big hoopla. We had the Atlantis cast, like 7 or 8 of them, for San Diego Comic-Con. So we recorded in June, and that aired in July. And it was a big deal. The channel exploded from 11,000 members, subscribers, to now 19,000 we're at right now.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very thankful. And
100 episodes, too. That's a lot of work.
I don't think we're going to be able to do that this season. I was like, you know what? Let's just see where this goes, and now we can dial.
Well, you can at least do like 95 with Melazzi, and then make the rest up with us, us schmoes.
Well, my God, schmoes, give me a break. I'm starting to think kind of like how you guys probably felt, when going from 20 to 40 at season 8 and season 1, respectively. I mean, at some point you must have been thinking, okay, quality, quantity, where do we draw the line here? It's, we have our A ideas that we've been meditating on over the off season. And now some of the B ideas or C ideas are going to have to come into the fray. Did it ever look like that? Did you ever think to yourself, you know what? We have 40 frickin' stories to tell in a 52-week year. This is not possible.
Well,
no one would do that nowadays.
Yeah, but I mean, look, the main trick is bring in new minds, like bring in new people who have different ideas or aren't as familiar with the canon or are gonna, break the mold a little bit and add to that board. And then, a season 1 with Atlantis, it was fresh. There were fresh stories to tell with the characters, new characters. I mean, some new, some borrowed from SG1. But I don't think there was a lack of ideas for Atlantis. And again, getting back to a previous conversation we had about SG1, I think the way in which we continually energized that show was by embracing, the change and making sure that we were rethinking the show,
You're making a movie essentially every week on a television series budget, which was around $4 million an episode.
Oh, not for season 1 of Atlantis.
Not for season 1 of Atlantis. That was the question.
The only way we could have made Atlantis, even gotten it in the can was through the efficiencies of having both shows running concurrently. So right, if we had tried to mount Atlantis on its own at the budget we were given, which was significantly, I don't think I'm giving away any secrets here, but it was like significantly under 2.
For season 1.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so there's other calculations involved in terms of tax credits and what have you. But we were using both shows to support each other in terms of stages and sets, and we had one office for both shows, and
Correct.
a lot of the staff, the office staff, would work on both. There were significant savings, and SG1 at that time, having grown, I mean, one of the economics of production is that as the show goes on, it gets more expensive, but you don't actually put it on the screen because that's going to salary increases for cast and crew. But it's still, SG1 had a healthy budget at that point, so we could kind of beg, borrow, and steal where we needed to. There were a couple times when I felt a little tension from the from the SG1 side of things, going, how come Atlantis is getting that? Why aren't we getting that? And it's like, it's the new show. It's got to do well.
I remember the scene where Vala's sitting on the bench in Washington at the budget hearing, and they're saying, you know what, we've got to earmark funds for the Atlantis expedition. I mean, you guys can run on 10 to 20% of your budget, and you're not. I mean, you think it's a big deal, but it's really not. And I remember thinking to myself at the time, I wonder how much of this echoed the conversations that they must have had last season when Atlantis
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Of course.
I mean, it's always, that's how we stay sane. We reflect the reality we're living.
Imitate life
in the show. Like that was the thing about the we were talking about 100th episode for you, is that was the thing about the 100th and the 200th, and is that was our chance to kind of have fun with the reality of the making of the show and what we went through, and that was sort of I know the some hardcore fans, let's not say all hardcore fans, but some of them didn't appreciate those episodes because they thought we were mocking the show. But
they can go to hell. Oh, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. You don't have to go to hell.
You just went down to like 17,000.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I saw that the ticker is going down right now.
I don't actually mean that. I'm just kidding. But I mean, you have to have some levity. How else are you going to do it? Especially when you have someone like Richard Dean Anderson, who's not going to be Door. You have to break into it.
No, and that was the tone of the show. I mean, it's why people like the show. I mean, even now I have people who sort of say, well, you've never done comedy before. And I was like, you haven't seen our show, I guess.
No, there's no way. Yeah, they wouldn't make that comment otherwise. Speaking of the 100th, we lost Willie Garson a few months ago.
Tragic. We've had a whole rash of people who've been with the show pass away of late.
It was shocking, absolutely shocking. And you shared the story that you had with him from the Wormhole Extreme set, where he's saying, where you have your line of and he was able to turn on a dime. I was wanting to ask if there was any other story that you remember of him during production, either from that episode or from the original, or from years later when he came back for 200.
Well, I mean, he was. It's producers are asked, or writers are asked all the time, what's that person really like, and they always say glowing things, and so. It's hard to separate the truth from the reality, from the lies. In the case of Willie, he was just so genuinely a decent guy and such a consummate professional, and everyone loved being around him. That's why we kept having him back and tried to come up with reasons to put his character in the show. I mean, Rick was the ultimate litmus test. He was not the friendliest of guys to everybody, and he just loved Willie, and you know, it was he was a just a sweetheart, and you know, his contributions were always made things better too. Like that's the he wasn't certainly he didn't do it a lot. Like he was always trying to make things work the best he could, but you know, when he did make a suggestion, it was always fantastic. And yeah, we all sort of communicated with each other when that happened, and it still sort of stings.
Absolutely, it does. I remember having him on for Dial. I was very lucky to have him on in season 1, and he said, you know, I'm not really a sci-fi guy, you know. I did kind of the sci-fi tour for a little while with the miniseries that he was in on Sci-Fi Channel. I can't remember the name right now. The chat's gonna eat me alive. Put it in chat. I don't know what it is. But also Voyager and then SG-1. And he's like, this is not like really my genre, but I just love doing it, you know. And he had such a wacky, over the top character that everyone just bought hook, line, and sinker. I mean, he was terrific. He was magnetic when he was on that screen.
Yeah, I mean, and I always loved the sort of more meta aspects of his character in the show and the episodes he was in. So, you know, and the I think the key when doing something meta that really, well, in the case of, you know, 200 and 100 almost, you know, forcefully broke the fourth wall, it is to keep it grounded, right? Make it still feel like it's not a total farce, that there's some tether to a real character there. And that's what he was able to do, is you just felt for him. Even when he was being kind of a jerk, you know, because it was funny to watch him kind of get full of himself, right? He started as someone who was so, frankly, you know, desperate in his situation and begging for help. And, you know, he turns into this sort of, power hungry producer. I mean, we can all identify with that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. At certain points in our lives, like depending on the situation that we're in, he found his niche. And, you know, I can't imagine, I imagine he was a composite of different characters that you guys have probably in your careers worked with over the years.
Yeah, I just can't imagine someone having something bad to say about him.
You know, you tapped into something that I've heard repeatedly before with Rick, where he was your lead and you guys watched him, and obviously, and if there was someone that not to say that he didn't, but if he like extra rose to the occasion with, then you guys took notice. And one of the others was Tom McBeath, you know, where it's like Rick would be extra on when this guy was on. It's like, well, you know what? Let's have another show where you've got a good cop, bad cop, you know, and put them in another situation together.
Yeah, for sure. If there was a like a regular guest, I mean, you know, Gary was like that a lot too. You know, they got along.
Gary Jones, yes.
Yeah, Gary Jones got along amazingly. But it also had to do sometimes with Rick just getting to know that person. You could see it instantaneously with people he had obvious reverence for outside the show, like when, you know, Dan Castellaneta came on, or you know, Dom DeLuise. That was, you know, a special situation that we were all grateful to have experienced.
You want to talk about an amazing hour of television.
Yeah,
absolutely. I have over 60 questions submitted from fans.
Holy mackerel.
And
okay.
I posted this 2 days ago, and I was sitting
there thinking, rapid fire. Can we do rapid fire answers?
I picked 16. And originally,
by the way, that's rapid fire answers are something that you should post. Rob Cooper is not capable of.
Well, I'm going, but I was sitting down a couple of days ago, and I was like, okay, I've got to get the requests out, and I sat down last night to call them. And on one hand, I'm thinking season 2 of SG1, we're gonna go back, we're gonna get into some history, and I pull these up, and I'm like, 60 questions. Okay, let's see how many there are, and I'll be damned if I'm not going to give most of the show over to the fans for this one. So I've gone through and I'm gonna give the lion's share to them here. Michelle Lee wanted to know. What inspired you to weave Arthurian mythology into seasons 9 and 10 as a way to battle the Ori? Do you personally enjoy Arthurian mythology? Was this your idea? Was this Brad's, Joe's, Paul's?
No, I mean, I loved it, and I was looking for some other mythology that was sort of, that felt like what the show was, right? That we took mythologies or real history and put a twist on them, put our Stargate twist on them. So I was looking for one that, felt like it had some awareness in the fan base, and also, would be fun to explore and do our version of. Like it's not unlike taking Atlantis, in the same way that we used ancient. Well, I can't even take credit for it. The movie started with using ancient Egyptian mythology. So, it was just it was there for the taking, and I liked it. I mean, I think there was something about we always looked at technology as the fact that a technology to someone who didn't understand it could look like magic. So that just sort of led me down the path of saying, look, what is other mythology that involves magic, and how is magic, and can it be used story-wise to kind of enhance where we were going, which was the Ori story, which was about ascension and higher power, and whether or not that was real, or whether there was some veneer of magic involved. So I mean, I just felt like it was a story I had not seen with a sci-fi twist like that on yet.
You bring in Merlin in the quest too. Was there ever talk of bringing in Arthur himself?
Yeah, I'm sure there was. I don't remember it. I don't remember that part of it, but I felt like we kind of we wanted our characters to take on the mantle of the knights, and I didn't want someone to come in and sort of steal the show.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, Mitchell kind of picked up that mantle when he successfully pulled the sword from the stone. So he was kind of Arthur.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Absolutely. It's like, yeah, duh, David. We're not going to bring in someone else. He's kind of that role.
No. I mean, it's a valid question. I just think, and you asked about it, and I'm sure we talked about it, but it just seemed more natural and forwarded our own character stories to have them take on that. It was okay to have the mentor essentially there, but we wanted the hero that was called to action to be our guys.
That makes sense. Jamie Hitt, when did you guys really know that you had lightning in a bottle with SG1? I mean, obviously you started off greenlit, so with 2 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons. When did you really get a sense, okay, not only do we have a long list of seasons to really expand stuff, but this is clicking? Did you start seeing it on the screen? Was it on the page first? Was it when the 4 talent got together?
I mean, if you're looking for like a specific episode, I don't know that I can pinpoint it. I mean, they kept ordering it, so we kept making it, and I do think it kept getting that was the other thing that I think everybody felt, was that it was going in a positive direction. So I don't know that it was like a fireworks going off epiphany moment where we all were like, this is great. It's a process where you're always working to try and make something better. And, there can be situations in which there are forces at work that are working against that and making it worse to the point where everybody, bails out. In this case, I think everyone felt that it was getting better consistently, and I think it was honestly for me season 4 when I felt like the show really kind of hit its stride, and there were more episodes that I thought were successful than ones that I thought were less successful.
To this day, season 4 is my favorite. I have to agree. It doesn't contain my favorite episode, but in terms of the freshness of the stories, I think the balance of drama and humor really took off that season. Not to say that the earlier or later seasons don't have their distinct quality, which they all do, but every season, okay, this is going to sound stupid, kind of has like a vibration to it. Like the texture, when you look at this as a viewer, when I look at the season, it's like, okay, this is how I feel a sense or like a color of this season. And season 4 is always to this day the warmest that I had of SG1. There was something special about that year.
Yeah, I mean, I look at each one and see ups and downs, but
you probably see your kids when you look at each season. Oh, this was going on at home.
Yeah,
this was happening.
I still have a affection for season 7, because of Heroes and the setup of Atlantis.
Wow,
Lost City.
Was that the big? I guess it was probably self-evident that was the beginning of the hectic times. That's when season 7 began production. Is that when the conversations about Atlantis started taking place with SYFY behind the scenes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I wanted to ask you about cast transitions. Which do you think were some of the more successful? Which do you think were just more out of? They all happened for their different reasons. Jonas replaced Daniel. Daniel replaced Jonas. Cameron took over for Jack. Vala was introduced. Jennifer Keller replaced Garson. Samantha Carter replaced Dr. Weir. And Woolsey eventually replaced Carter as well. Now, keep all that encapsulated. And how do you feel about the cast transitions for those shows? And how
I don't know that it's going to sound like I'm dodging, but I don't know that I would, I'd ever look at them as something I could rank. Like they all were, necessary. They were necessitated by either things going on behind the scenes or story, and so I always saw them as something that had to happen, and in almost every case you mentioned, I think it was successful. It did what it needed to do. It brought new energy and chemistry to the show. And, I think with a couple of exceptions, I think the fans were always, maybe they didn't like the change initially, but if you went back and said, well, would you take Woolsey out of the show? They would say, no, I wouldn't do that at all. I did Jennifer Keller replace Fraiser? I think
Garson.
Garson.
Yeah. So we lost him in Sunday, and then you guys had. Sorry.
Sorry, I must have misheard you.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think there was at some point a process of potentially getting her in. If I'm misremembering something that Joe said to me. The death of Fraiser was obviously the one that was most controversial for the fans, and so I mean that one I never saw as being one where we
ever really replaced her. That was not so much of a, that was not a casting decision. That was a story decision. And,
to be fair, I did not put her on this list.
yeah.
So, because I was thinking of that, I was like, I mean, I don't really see. There was like a series of doctors who came in after, but yeah, going back to that was you guys were. There wasn't going to be a season 8. This was it. And had there only been 7 seasons of SG1, I don't think anyone would have complained.
Yeah.
I mean, there would have been, there would have been a few complainers, but in the scheme of things, I mean, plans change, and it is still, I think, one of just, this was going to be a home run anyway, but Heroes, but that really hit it out of the park, in terms of putting your money where your mouth is and saying, you know what, this is what we're saying about true heroes and the people who are out there who have taken up the call.
Yeah,
they're fighting
look,
fires or fighting overseas.
As a viewer, I'm growing up obviously a huge fan of television. I always recognized that having a character who you got to know over multiple episodes and multiple seasons was someone you grew closer to than anyone you could ever, get close to in a movie. Like, when a character died in a movie, it was sad and you certainly had a reaction to it, but it was never the same as when a long-standing character that you were a huge fan of died in a series. And so, as a writer, how could you not want to? Certainly, you don't want to do it all the time. You don't want to be the Grim Reaper of television. Right. But you how could you not want to write about that type of loss? That's what we do, right? That's what we want to kind of get in there and play with is the emotion that goes along with life. And so, I mean, it was not something that I would have done again, but
this is not to harken back to a show that my parents love. This is not This Is Us. This is a military show, and this is a conflict series where war is very much happening. So I think that it added some legitimacy, much like Tasha Yar's death in Next Generation did. People can be taken from us at any point. The same as what happened with Daniel, except it was just a little bit more metaphysical.
Yeah, I mean, look, it wasn't a comedy. It was a drama, a science fiction action show, but had all those elements: drama and comedy, and yeah, and for the most part, it was meant to be fun and make you think. But it was not. It was not. We never pretended to suggest it was going to shy away from some issues every now and then.
Jack wanted to know, were there ever any ideas thrown around for Jonas to pop up in the last 3 seasons of SG1? Langara gets a mention in I believe it's season 10 where they've been taken by the Ori. But other than that, there's not much of a reference after Fallout.
Yeah, I can't remember, honestly. I can't remember. I'm sure there were conversations about how to include him or bring him back, but I don't remember any specific stories I can relate.
Okay. Jupiter 2 wanted to know, was it an easy decision in sometimes having the same guest actors appear in the series more than once, even through a different character? Or was it a struggle because of the recognition?
Well, have you ever gone through the list on IMDb of how many actors were in SG1?
It's a lot. And Vancouver wasn't that big a town.
How many human beings do you think we could find to read lines over the course of 14 seasons? So, I mean, we really tried hard not to cast the same actor in the same series, but excuse me.
Yeah.
But if we were switching shows,
Garwin Sanford, for instance, yeah.
What choice did we have? Yeah. I mean, Garwin's super talented actor, and he was right for the role. And by the way, everyone in the show was acting.
That's not actually them. Yeah, it's a fair point to be made when online people. There are a number of fans that I've come across who are like, it really breaks the illusion for me if they're not under like a rubber mask or something. I'm like, well, I mean, if it comes down to having the right talent and having a repeat face, at a certain point you have to be swept away by the narrative and knowing that these are actors performing on a stage, and that that's where do you draw the line? You have to draw the line in buying what you're seeing.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I totally agree with you, but I would also add that it's two things. It's the narrative and the performance. I mean, if the actor is good enough, and that's, usually why we would cast them, it is that you'd go, oh, hey, that was so-and-so, but then, whatever, 5 minutes into their performance in the show, you're like, no, they're that person, because they've taken you there. They've done something different. They've brought something to the role. And that's why we, look, Reese Witherspoon has been in a few television shows in the last little while, often on the air at the same time. And I tune in and watch it knowing it's Reese Witherspoon. And I'm there to see, in part, what she does with this role, this different role, and also look at that story as a different animal than what I just watched on another channel. So I don't know. It's and it's the same with movies. I mean,
I don't know if you recall.
It's interesting because you see people talk about the other, like the DC and the Marvel universe, and I think they're probably pretty good in terms of wanting to, obviously not cast a character again within a different movie that is playing a different character within the Marvel universe. They're also even careful about whether they take someone from DC and put them in Marvel, although that happens. Like the weird, but then they also kind of poked fun at it in Wanda, right? Where,
absolutely. With what's his face? Runs really fast. I can't think of his name.
Yes.
Yeah. My favorite is Green Lantern and Deadpool. I mean, and that's
that's
right on the face.
Deadpool is not breaking the fourth wall. It's on our side of the fourth wall.
Right,
like
exactly.
Literally, he's sitting beside us on the couch. I mean, that's pretty funny, huh?
Well, I mean, even when he brings up Xavier, Stewart or McAvoy, I'm like, okay, that's too far. I have a really hard time believing anything that I'm seeing at that point.
Yeah, but in that case, it doesn't matter. You're not there for the reality of it.
That's
You're there for the
true.
spectacle and the performance. It's the same as, when you see a live, when you see a play or a live performance or a comedian on stage, you're not under the illusion that this is reality that you're seeing, right? It's a performance, and you're there to see the spectacle of the performance and the talent that is doing something extraordinary that is entertaining you. That is different from whether or not we are fulfilling our commitment to 100% portray reality in a realistic way. So they're two different things, and it's like we're here to entertain you, and there's some times when I am asking you to believe the conceit that what I'm doing is reflecting a reality with a groundedness that is meant to engage you in a story that feels, quote, real. And if I don't succeed in that, then that is a failure. So if there's a continuity error and there's a Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones,
oh my God, yes,
then that's going to pop me out of that reality, right? That's going to pop me out of whatever real world they're trying to create. And I understand that criticism, and I understand the criticism dramatically when I do something that feels like, a big pet peeve of mine is coincidence. And I think, it's like an old sort of story chestnut that it's okay if a coincidence starts a story, because that's why the story is happening. That odd coincidence caused these two characters to meet on a train, and now, now their lives are changed, and we see the ripple effect of that. But when a coincidence solves the story, it's just like, no, they couldn't come up with another way of doing it, or it doesn't happen that way. Like, things in reality never happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
And now you feel like you're watching the construction of some, puppeteer who's just moving pieces around however they want, and sometimes not in a very good way. And that's where the betrayal sort of seeps in, and you kind of feel like, they've broken the contract that they had with me at the beginning of this. And so, to me, Deadpool, the contract I signed at the beginning of that experience, they never broke that contract. That was very clear in the big print, not even the fine print, what I was getting, right?
You want to know what probably my biggest axe to grind is out of the entire franchise?
Of Stargate?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure I could probably guess about 100 things, but yeah, go ahead.
Vala disappearing through the ring transporter in the middle of deep space and winding up safe and sound on a planet in the Ori galaxy. That was probably like, okay, that's a stretch. For me, that was the one that really, I was like, how does this work? But you have to, you have a great character. You have to remove her from the situation, and you have an opportunity to bring her back. Sooner or later, you just have to buy it.
Yeah, I don't remember all the mechanics of that particular sequence or instance, but I know, like, we certainly had a number of people, none stronger than Paul Mully, who was, like, the logic police in the room, and would be like, no, how does this make sense? And that's not possible. And I used to think I sort of leaned more on the side of that, but I'd have to go back and watch that again and to remember exactly what the conversation was and why we all felt that was acceptable.
Yeah, because the gate's opening and she gets transmitted to the other side. Daniel is the one who brings it up at the end of that episode. He's like, if we wanted to send a message to the Ori, I think we just did. I think Carter has that line as well. But, it's those classic tropes, like beaming out at the last second. It's one of the great moments at the beginning of 200. Sorry, Furlings, there's nothing that we can do. They beam out and let the planet go to hell.
Look, we resisted the things that we saw in other science fiction shows for so long, but then eventually you're just like, okay, I guess we gotta, I guess we're gonna do that. Like, we would be like, no, we're not gonna do beaming, and then the next thing you know, the Asgard are doing beaming.
Asgard transporters were, I think, inevitable at a certain point. So I think that's one of the things that I hope about, if there is an SG4 at some point, that there is some kind of handicap introduced in the story, if we are lucky enough to have the continuation of your continuity, some handicaps introduced into the script for some of the technologies. So, like you guys did for SGU, you put yourself out there in the middle of nowhere with no support. So the Daedalus class ship is not going to fly in and save everyone's butt.
Right.
Absolutely. Dan Ben wanted to know, Rob, were there any, and this may be a little bit mental gymnastics here, any deleted scenes over the years that just killed you to pull from the show?
Well, it's kind of a cheat answer.
Okay.
But I mean, I'd say cutting threads was one of the most difficult things I had ever done.
Really? Even with the extended version?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that the extended version was a fight. There was never it was never a sure thing that was going to happen. So there were times when I thought those scenes were never going to see the light of day. And I had to really argue for the 90-minute version. And even still, I'm not sure that's the version. I haven't checked, but I'm not sure that's the version that makes it to streamers. You know, I think it's available on DVD, but I'm not sure
that's has the full version.
Right. Then I'm not sure that's the one that people watch if they're looking at it on Netflix or Amazon or whatever. So it's that was a big deal because I thought there were scenes, particularly the ones with Teal'c, that we had to lose at the end. It was a Teal'c Braytac scene, and I was just like, this is like major. You know, this is major closure for these characters. Yeah. And it was almost like this, you know, the episode didn't make sense without the extra stuff. So, I mean, we didn't have that problem a lot. I mean, in fact, we were often shooting new material to add to shows. Episodes would come in short more often than I think they were long. If they were long, it wasn't because there was too much material. It's because they were being cut in a way that was too slow and ended up boring. I mean, it needed to get cut down. Well, and I mean, obviously the you know, the hero scenario, which we've talked about many times, where the episode came in quite a bit long. But Threads was the one where I was really kind of like, how can I do this? How can I put out an episode that is not what it was intended to be? And, you know, fortunately, we kind of sort of won the battle for the longer episode.
So SYFY wasn't open arms about this. Yeah, sure, give us a longer one. They fought you.
I wouldn't put it on SYFY. I don't remember if it was entirely them. I mean, part of it was MGM too. It's just a hassle for them to have two versions. There's an easy sort of waterfall that happens after you deliver an episode, and you know, we've talked about it in terms of you know, Brad's recut of the pilot, you know, and how that somehow gets ignored, and you know, it's just, but that's not a choice always that some person's making. It's just they take the show off the shelf and they put it on the, you know, on the whatever they do for the broadcast. You know, it's like, it's
not conscious. Someone is
the two file. Versions. What do I do? And also, and then, you know, and then the big deal is for certainly for broadcast, you know, we don't own the extra air. You think it's easy, but they segment these things. Like today in the world of streaming, it doesn't matter. It's just sitting there on a platform, and who cares what length it is? But in the days when there were commercials that were breaking these things up, and you had a format that was exactly 42 minutes and whatever seconds, you couldn't break that.
I'm curious to see how you are going to respond to this one.
Ooh,
the character
setup.
The characterization is interesting, and it's not one that I fully agree with, even though I see where they are coming from.
Here comes the knuckleball.
This is a paragraph, so feel free to ingest and then chew accordingly. Seal wanted to know, is there any sense among you or the other Stargate creatives how little the credit the franchise gets for being a more dark and dramatic military science fiction series in its Showtime seasons? There were serious examinations of politics, critiques of the military, and the U.S. foreign policy in episodes like Core I and 48 Hours. That chilling moment in The Other Side, O'Neill executes a genocidal maniac begging for his life, knowing that his own government will probably accommodate him in return for his knowledge. That's when we lost Rene Aubergenois. Discussion of nuclear weapons in Meridian. The show could hit it hard when it wanted to, and it did so often. People who had become familiar with the generally lighter sci-fi seasons said that Stargate became dark when Universe came about, and I say it returned to its roots. Any thoughts on that dynamic?
Well, you said it was Seal who
yes.
wrote
that? Ciel. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce that.
Well, yeah, hopefully I'm getting that right. But thank you very much for writing that and for recognizing it. I mean, I can't control what other people think. And so, I'm always happy when I see that we make some list somewhere of, whatever, best shows with a ring in it.
That's funny.
I just, I think I probably disagree somewhat that the later seasons didn't deal with issues. I mean, but yeah, I mean, look, it was always a balance, and we were certainly always interested in dealing with those issues, and because it was in, it had the veneer of or at least a little buffer of science fiction, so it wasn't literally our world. You could kind of get away with stuff like that. So, I mean, whether or not we got recognition, we were somewhat of an obscure show those first, that first while. And I have wondered what would it be like now if we were doing that show? Like when things go that long, they have a way of snowballing into something bigger, and I wonder I wonder how big it would be now if we were doing it now. Like I look back at how that show was built, and the fact is, it wouldn't have lived as long as it did had it not had that initial run on Showtime.
I agree.
So, yeah, I mean, look, I'll be honest. The fact that, I don't think we ever had the strongest marketing or outreach, for the show. So I would say I blame a little of that on the push behind the show. SYFY. I think we've talked about this before, that it was an acquisition, right? And it did very well for them, and they liked the show, and they were supportive of the show, but not quite as much as the shows they owned. So if MGM didn't promote the show, then SYFY was not going to promote it as strongly as they promoted some of their other stuff.
I never thought of it that way, because it wasn't an in-house thing originally with SYFY like Eureka or Warehouse 13 was.
Right, it never was. It was or Battlestar Galactica.
Right, that's true.
Right, so it was MGM. So yeah, that was always a bit of an issue. But again, I'm not whining about something that was very successful.
Right, absolutely. There's a reason that Dial the Gate is now at almost 20,000 members. I mean, someone is watching. So, and someone is picking up what you guys.
Well, yeah, and I look. We've talked about this. That I'm very grateful that the show continues to be something that people are engaging with. But again, I have to wonder, what would it look like if we were doing it now?
I'm thinking 8 to 10 episode seasons. It'd be done in 4 or 5 years.
Maybe.
Things get chewed up and spat out so fast now. The velocity of content now is just crazy.
Yeah, they do.
And even if like Stranger Things, which is one of the most just pulling that out of from the sky, 4 seasons and then that's it. It's a novelty. I really think that the second that SYFY acquiring it, and then the various spin-offs. But I think also, having said that, you had a lot to mine there with the Stargate itself, with the idea behind that. So the
Sure.
series itself created its own opportunities as you went along because the storytelling was so good.
Well, thank you.
Ta Toten Tatoten wants to know, Rob, if you could film parts of SG4 in a foreign country, what country would you love to film in?
Ooh,
Unlimited budget. Malta, Switzerland, Iceland.
Well, all of them. I mean, God. I mean, if you put unlimited budget in there, I mean, of course, all of them. There are certainly a lot of budgetary advantages to a number of places right now that, many shows are being shot in. But I also found that going other places was fantastic. It's challenging, it's challenging to work with crews from other places who aren't familiar with the show and the shorthand. And so, I mean,
or let your camera run out while you're filming a fall from high up.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I don't know how to answer that question. It's what's the story, right? Like
that's true too.
I think the best example of reverse engineering was when Brad got offered the opportunity to go to the North Pole and see a submarine come up out of the ice, and he's like, okay, how do I turn that into a story? Yeah, how do I turn that into a story? But I think I would be like, well, what's the story?
I think that is a terrific example of refining an idea based on circumstance, and that's a less eloquent way of putting what you just did, where it's like, we had a conversation about where do ideas come from, and you said that you were very thematic, and I wanted to tell a story about revenge, whereas Brad might have this idea of a scene in his head, where opportunities would come up like that, or where you guys would be seeing something on the news about a new development in the GVRD, the forest up there in Vancouver. Oh, that spot. Let's go there.
Yeah,
absolutely. Did opportunities like that come up on for location scouting? Were you guys?
Well,
how was that done?
Like the best example of that, it was when we shot in New Mexico for the pilot of Air. At the time, Andy Makita got some, intel from one of the location managers we were working with that there was something really cool up north, and he took a long drive and looked at these hoodoos that were, in the north of New Mexico, and he's like, we have to go back there. And I was like,
oh, the Misty Badlands for season 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And and he's still, I'm sure, mad at me to this day for stealing it. For that show. So it's for my episode. So that was a case where I was like, that's a cool look, and what's a show I can set there, and that actually was the confluence of that episode was having a conversation, sitting on the set with Robert Carlyle and having him say, if what's something you've always dreamed of doing, like we were talking about the fact that science fiction is not one genre, it's all of them, and that you can literally do anything you want. And I said, so what's something you've always wanted to do? And he said, I always wanted to do a Western. And so I was like, done. And
nice,
so we
classic revenge story.
Yeah.
Right there. No, that's New Mexico is one of the, if listeners get a chance, White Sands in season 1 and then the Misty Badlands in season 2. I've been to both places. Absolutely remarkable locations, and especially the second one. It's so alien, but
it's crazy. You're driving along, and the crazy thing about it is that it's all below ground level, right? So you're driving along, it's perfectly flat. You don't see anything, and all of a sudden the world just opens up and it's there, and it's you're looking down into it, and it's crazy.
Just absolutely crazy. Universe was so spectacular, partly because the locations were just sensational. You guys were really on your game with that, even with interiors and the green screen when they're going from gate to gate to gate near the end of season 1, and we get all these different locations. It just looked spectacular. The money really appeared on screen.
We had more of it.
There you go. I'm interested in your thoughts on this. I'm also willing, if you want to just pass this one, that's fine. Redux, with the recent accident on the Alec Baldwin movie set, was wondering how gun safety, training, practical effects, and overall safety was on Stargate, since it was such an action-oriented show. James Bamford and I have spoken about this. Dan Shea, this was the core of your show in many respects, and some of it had to have been some of the hardest elements to shoot.
Yeah. Look, that situation was tragic, and obviously, my heart goes out to everyone who's involved. I don't know how you cope with that. It's not, however, the first time someone's died on set. Stunts are dangerous, and I think the people who are good at it and who are involved do understand the danger. Now, that was obviously not a stunt. So that was a situation in which, when I started hearing about it, I was like, I don't understand what happened? How did that happen? Like there's no situation I've ever been involved in which you would have a live round on set. The B side of a gun sequence is always a separate explosion. It's a little harmless little firecracker that's showing you what. And even then, nowadays, we'd gotten to a point, even towards the end of Stargate, which was 10 years ago, not having any sort of rounds in the gun. Now, the actors often preferred it because it would give them some sort of reaction.
The recoil, yeah, it's a very physical thing.
And in the case of the P90s, the shell ejecting, which frankly was a problem as far as injuries as well. People get burned by them. The P90s were helpful because it ejected the shell straight down, as opposed to a lot of the automatic weapons would come out sideways. So if you were next to somebody, the hot shell would hit them in the arm. I think that happened to Amanda one time, or maybe more than once. I couldn't count the number of blanks that we probably fired off over the years.
Thousands.
No, it was more like millions. Seriously,
more like millions.
I can't, but because there were times with thousands. Like, think about the scenes where there would be outside, where there'd be, people with 20, 30. And it wasn't like we were kind of, cheaping out on the people in the distance either. It was like they were firing rounds, and one of the problems I think people don't probably think about or understand is that the other benefit to having a blank is that you see the muzzle fire, but you don't always see it. So we were having to fix that anyway sometimes, because the shutter of the camera is going through at a rate so fast that sometimes you're not actually even seeing that quick flash of fire. So it's not even there when it's supposed to be.
So post-production would fix some of those.
Yeah, we put the muzzle flashes in.
Never knew that.
Yeah, so so then it's like we're doing it half the time anyways. Let's just do it all the time and make it safer. But look, the armors, the people who handled the weapons were always, and on other shows that I've done on Dirk, were always super professional, and I had a ton of confidence in them. But the precautions that would be taken, you would never ever point a gun at a camera I mean, even from the point of view of, camera preservation, you didn't want to damage a $200,000 camera, let alone hurt a cameraman. There was always like bulletproof Lexan in front of the camera and big shields, and people would get under these big blankets in case there was some sort of projectile that was fired out. The one incident I'm familiar with in which a blank hurt somebody, it was extremely close range. Anyway, yeah, I mean, look, I think I can't think of many scenarios in which visual effects can't make things 100% safe today. There's no excuse for really putting someone in danger with a firearm. I mean, there's going to continue to be, and certainly visual effects are going to shortly get to the point where, many stunts are not really necessary. But I mean, look, it's still a dangerous endeavor, and I think hopefully the people who do things on sets that are dangerous understand the risks.
Absolutely.
And are observing all the safety precautions. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this particular incident's an evolving story, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward.
I mean, I can't speak to the facts that are kind of coming out.
Correct.
Or what is true and what is not true. It's all alleged at the moment. So
yep.
let's be
crystal clear on that.
Cautious that way. Yeah.
Yep. Mitch Mays, left turn here. How emotional was Meridian to write? How quickly did it come out? How did it take some time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I should say it was hard, but I liked writing the emotional stuff. I mean, that was sort of energizing. It was easy to write a scene that had that kind of weight to it and heart to it, and really messed with the lead character's emotions and connections to each other. I mean, trying to find an entertaining way to write a hallway scene that's full of exposition, that's tough.
You do 1 million of them. Yeah.
But that stuff was great. It was fun. Like, I don't want to say it's fun to kill Daniel, but
some people would say it's fun to kill Daniel.
But it was always very exciting to be able to do the bigger things.
Did you have Mel Harris in mind when you were writing it? Was Mel on the page there, or was it just Oma?
I mean, I was always a fan of hers.
Yeah.
So I don't remember exactly when the suggestion came up that she was available or could be involved.
She and her son had recently visited the set at some point beforehand.
Right.
So
I think that may have been what put it in my head.
Okay. Yeah. What a magnificent performance. To this day, it's one of her favorite characters. There was something really done there. That kind of Obi-Wan to Luke kind of mentor situation where Daniel was the heart and soul of that show in many respects. I mean, you can argue each of the characters had a piece of that for sure.
You have to understand, like I won't include everyone. I won't speak for everybody, but at least me and a few of the people I knew who I was close to on the show did not think of the show as some sort of big global hit television show. We were just there doing our jobs and having fun on a set and whatever. So when a celebrity or someone who was, famous would get in touch with us and say, oh, we like the show, or they want to come visit or whatever, we were like, really? Wow. Like, people watch this show, and, so we weren't, it was always a bit of a thrill,
You had your heads down working.
we had our heads down. And so it was always a bit of a thrill when we found out someone was a fan, and then we'd be like, let's get them on the show. Let's not waste that fandom.
If they're watching, you know, especially if they're watching with their families, that was some of the amazing things about a lot of those characters that a lot of the actors that you got as the show went on. I mean, Lou Gossett Jr., my gosh, you know, I always think, wouldn't he have been an amazing Landry? You know, if the adjustments, if things had gone just a little bit of a different way. And Bo, you know, I mean, what a show! What would the show have been without Bo?
That was the thing with Dan Castellaneta too. Like, that wasn't like we should cast Dan Castellaneta as this character. It was like we had heard Rick had bought some sort of charity table read thing where he got to go, and he was a huge fan of The Simpsons.
Correct.
And obviously, you know, the whole dough thing was a big DOH, not bread.
The apostrophe OH.
Yeah, was a big thing for him. And so it was that relationship that started the ball rolling on the idea that maybe we could get Dan to come and do the show. And I don't remember, I think it was after that The Simpsons decided to do their Stargate thing.
It was around there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rick did a Stargate convention on The Simpsons before he had done a Stargate convention. And so we were all like, oh, come on, you know, and then of course he then went and actually did a Stargate convention. Then it was like, okay, that's pretty legit, you know. But the talent.
When was Galaxy Quest?
Galaxy Quest was 99. What year was that? Galaxy Quest was 99.
Yeah. So 2 years in, almost 3 years in. So.
You want to talk about an amazing parody of a film right there. You know, I think one of the better phrases, not to go too off topic, but I think one of the better phrases that's on the internet right now, Galaxy Quest is the best Star Trek film ever made. Parody, there's a thing to be said for parody, man. If you look at the Orville now, and
so Dean Pariso, I worked with him and I still can't say his name. I had the opportunity to work with him on, he directed the pilot of Dirk Gently.
Okay.
So yeah, I got a chance to really fanboy over that movie and explain to him just how much it meant to a whole writer's room of science fiction writers, and how you know how sad he also made us feel to some extent.
Well, it's either going to work or it's not. You know, when one of those films comes out there, and the Galaxy Quest documentary is one of the better documentaries out there, because they talk about how it was going to be this one thing, and then it kind of became something that was even better. You know, and you can't. I think it's a great example. You can't plan these things out on a spreadsheet. Because if you do, people will see between the lines what's going on. They'll see that they're being they'll feel that they're being manipulated.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cliff Maxwell. This week, kind of piggybacking on what we spoke on before with modern television. What are some, because you've produced TV more recently than Stargate, obviously. What are some of the larger complexities and hurdles of creating the show back then from potentially creating a new Stargate today? What's different in the landscape?
Wow. Well, look, money is always an issue. And you think, you know, what's the budget going to be? I mean, you look at some of the stuff that's out there right now, and people are like, why doesn't all television look like that? Well, those shows have huge budgets, feature budgets. You have streamers fighting for your subscriptions and your eyeballs, and trying to stake out a claim. And so the budgets are enormous. So how do you compete with that? And you know, I've always argued just because I drove a, you know, I'm gonna ruin it with whatever brand of car I use here, but it's like, just because I drove a Toyota, it doesn't mean I can't drive a Lamborghini, you know, like, I think I'd figure it out. Um, but yeah, that's a lot of money to spend, and it'd be great. And I think some people trip and fall a little bit over that, because it then becomes more about how do we spend the money than tell a story that's going to be engaging. So and create characters, you know, like, so that's why, I mean, I feel like personally I watch a lot of stuff that's the very expensive shows, and I feel like they're beautiful empty experiences. But look, it's the same problems, it's the same issues. It's getting people on board with your vision. It's communicating your vision, and then putting the pieces together, because there's so many pieces. It's a giant machine. There's cast, there's crew. Who's your DP? What's the look of the show? Who's your line producer? Who's going to make all that money work for you in a good way? That if any one of those things goes wrong, you could have a disaster on your hands. And so I mean, that problem hasn't changed at all.
That's certainly true. There are complexities in place that are just not going to go well, and it's part of the reason why you are surrounded by the best people that you can surround yourself with.
Right. Know? I mean, yeah, and so even then, I mean, the chemistry may or may not come together in a way that produces this final product. There is an experiment at play, which is why, you know, again, television for me is appealing, because once you do the initial experiment, and the show, you know, appears, it's a little easier to sustain it than when you're doing movies, and each one is a whole new thing on its own. You know, you're starting from scratch every time. At least you get to kind of ride the back of those initial choices when you're making a television show.
You were talking about driving Toyotas and Lamborghinis and everything else, and this image flashed through my head.
We own a Toyota, by the way. So not disparaging the brand.
So
it's a great car.
So that's funny, Rob. The image flashed through my head of you behind the wheel, and a story that you told Darren and me years ago, and I've been wanting to have it on the record since I started with you here, about how art kind of imitates life and vice versa, and how things just kind of fall into your orbit that ultimately make it into a TV series. Unending and CCR.
Yeah. What part of the story are you?
It kept on coming up in your life.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Every time you turned around.
Yeah, that sort of stuff happens weirdly a lot. I don't necessarily attribute any sort of religious,
right.
You know, miracle to it. But I just sometimes feel like coincidence can't be ignored. You know, like, you know, there's just when you're talking about something or thinking about something in particular, and you're like, oh, I wish I had a song for this particular scene, and you know, it's got to be kind of sad, and maybe it has rain in it or whatever. And then you get in the car and you turn the car on, and that song plays on the radio. You're like, well, maybe somebody's trying to tell me something. So yeah, I mean, there are a number of times where, again, when you're working on a budget, you kind of fall sometimes into the mindset of I can't have those things, so I'm not going to think about it.
So not even consider some things.
Right. Yeah. You just don't go there, because it's like, I can't, you know, we can't do that. I mean, we ended up, some of the experiences we had towards the end of, you know, of SG1 and Atlantis, we learned, oh yeah, guess what? We can find music, like pop music, and put it in the show, and it can work. And that's why we ended up repeatedly doing that. I mean, we were changing the tone a little bit with Universe, but there's a lot more contemporary music in that show. So sometimes you just have to kind of break out of that mindset of this, we can do that, like, and we would ask, and at a certain point, success kind of, becomes a little bit more undeniable, and the answer ends up being yes, like getting to go to Vegas for Atlantis at the end, and that became, let's not discount the possibility. We'd all sit around and go, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually shoot in Vegas? And in the old days, we would dismiss it because it's like, no, nobody's ever going to give us the money to do that. We learned to ask.
Yeah, it's like the lottery. If you don't play, you definitely won't win.
Yeah,
I think it's a great example of if you truly want something, what's the harm in asking?
Yeah, well, and you look at that episode, the Vegas episode, and it has the Rolling Stones in it. And,
it sure does.
Johnny Cash. I mean, it's like that was like, I was like, let's ask, let's ask A, how much it's going to cost, and B, if the studio will let us put it in the show.
Absolutely. You've already established Shepard as a Johnny Cash fan. There was no way I really think that you could do Vegas without a Johnny Cash song.
Yeah.
So, kind of piggybacking on that, mediocre, MEADYOGRE. That's clever. Any chance of getting, and I know this is not the tree to bark up, but I still want kind of your rallying cry with me here, because this is a drum that I've been beating for a long time. Any chance of getting a more comprehensive collection of Joel Goldsmith's music? And I know that probably has to do with his deal with his family, and whoever has access to those files. But man, especially the music in Universe, my gosh, I would give my right arm to have some of those.
Well, you shouldn't do that, but
no.
But yeah, no, it's look, every time I think about it, I obviously get sad and miss Joel. But it's a studio thing, I would think. It's an MGM thing. I don't know why it doesn't exist. I know there are some. There is
definitely.
I don't know if it's available actually on the streaming sort of music streaming sites or not. But
Arc of Truth and Continuum. But
not the Universe compilation.
No, Universe has never been released. No, and that's the one that I would love to have. And there are fake ones that are on YouTube where someone has divided up the 5.1 and isolated that audio track, but you've got all kinds of sounds on that same layer that just kind of muddy it up. But he was brilliant. The man was just a genius.
Yes, he was. So yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really answer that question, but I would just say write your letters to MGM.
Absolutely. A couple more here, and then I'm going to let you go, Rob.
Yeah.
Is there Goran Antonowski, is there a supporting guest character that you can think back on that you would have developed more if given the chance?
Well, that's one that I would need time to go back through that long list on
IMDb
before I could answer that. But maybe what we'll do is I'll think about that one and we can hit that next time.
Okay, that's fair. Meditate on that. Yeah. Shelley Johnson and Gap Stargate. What advice would you have for aspiring writers? More specifically, the motivation to keep going.
Look, I guess the first thing I would say is I still struggle with that.
Okay.
Myself.
Okay.
So you're not alone if it's something you question. I think if you're, I don't mean to sort of push you aside, but if you're a writer, you're not going to be able to quit.
Yeah.
like that's it's something you'll do whether you're getting paid for it or not, and you'll continue to try and get paid for it. I mean, it's something that, look, some people don't have a good voice and they still sing in the shower.
Right.
You
They do it
know,
for themselves, if
they do it for
anything else.
themselves.
Yeah.
But you know, you got to listen to, you got to listen, we got to read the room and listen to the world, right? Like, you do the best you can to be a sponge and learn craft, learn skills, learn what is available to you in terms of how to technically be a writer. But then at some point, yeah, you have to have talent and a story to tell that people want to hear. And sometimes, and so much of the time it's timing, you know, it's I feel like the idea of overnight success or flashes in the pan are sort of sexy stories, but they're not real, and they're not really very often. So most of it comes from hard work and persistence. I mean, to me, it's do good work, be persistent, and you know, that whole idea of, oh well, you know, it's not 100 no's before you get a yes. It's more than that. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more than that, and you have to realize that, you know, you're looking for those moments where the story you're telling and the person you're telling it to are the perfect match, and that there's some magical resonance there. It's, you know, I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's like, look, it's like, how do I find love? It's like, you know, you'll know it when you find it.
It begins and ends with persistence, it sounds like, though.
Yeah.
Because if you're not doing that, if you don't play, you're not going to win.
Yeah, keep doing it. I mean, and my argument, look, what I say to writers all the time is, as much as it is the story that you're telling, it's about you as the writer. You know, the way you get paid is by being not by having a product. You're not a manufacturer that is trying to sell a product. You're trying to sell you.
Right.
And so an agent, for example, looks at you and is not like, how do I sell this show? Selling a show is really hard. It's, how do I put this person on staff so people get to know them? And they're always thinking about it in terms of, not really in terms of your career. They're thinking about it in terms of money. How do I make money off this person? You are the product for those agents, for the people who are going to get you work. So, you know, if we're talking about screenwriting, I mean, find ways to demonstrate that you're a valuable tool, that you're a valuable piece of the puzzle that can fit into any, you know, not any situation, but specific situations. So, you know, you're writing multiple examples of like genres that you want to be a part of, that you want to be in. You don't want to be too broad a swath of, you know, types of shows or types of writing, because people won't know what you are and what you want to be. You got to be a little more specific. You can branch out a little bit more later and sort of redefine yourself, but at least initially you got to have a bit more of a target in mind, and then demonstrate that you're more than, you know, just a one-trick pony, and that you're not just, it's not just that one script you've written that you're trying to sell and turn into a big show. It's about you being a valuable piece of a puzzle in a writer's room, getting to know people. You move up, they start to like you, trust you, realize you deliver on a regular basis, and then they want to develop with you. And then they're like, what shows do you want to make? And then suddenly now you've gotten to a level where you're being, you know, you're respected enough that people trust you, because it's not like with a book where they can see everything on the page, and it's, you know, even then there's a risk involved. Maybe it won't find an audience, but the cost of putting it out there is so much smaller than the tens and tens of millions of dollars you have to put into making a television show. And nobody really knows the formula for success. And so what they do is they bank on people who have done it before or have some value that they see in the marketplace that they can blame when it goes wrong, that they can say, well, yeah, well, it was whatever. It was this star and that producer and that director. So it's not my fault. They, succeeded. So, you have to become someone in the person's eyes who controls that money, who controls the scenario, that they can trust, that they know is going to deliver. Well, how does that happen? It doesn't happen from one sample script. It happens from you working with them, from you getting a track record that speaks to the market, that they can look at and go, yeah, I believe in that person. So, it may seem like a long road. I don't know if I've really answered that person's question.
Yes,
but you have to think of yourself not as the producer of products, but as the machine that you're building.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. I really appreciate that answer. The last thoughts I'm going to leave to Chris De La Garza, and maybe you can comment on the impact. No question for Mr. Robert C. Cooper. I just want to say thank you, sir. I'm an Army vet with PTSD. I have binge watched Stargate at least 5 times. The show was relatable on a military level for me, and was there for me when I needed it. So,
well, I guess I accept that thank you with the utmost humility and humbleness, and say no, thank you for what you went through. I can't really express that strongly enough, that what I do is not the same.
Is it surprising to hear those stories, or is it a comfort to know that we created a product that is resonating, and all the work that you guys did with the U.S. military and making sure that it was correct has paid off?
No, I mean, I don't think it's surprising to hear that. I think I understand. I haven't been through that by any means, but I've been through some things, and I know that when I'm having a hard time, or when I've been through something, and I look often to entertainment to get me through it, or to find some commonality of experience, or some way in which I can rationalize what I went through, or even just to escape for a little while and take my mind off it. So I'm not just the maker of the product, I'm a consumer as well, and I understand that the value in that. So yeah, I'm glad that whatever I did had some impact in that way, but I definitely have experienced it myself.
What are you consuming right now that you recommend that we consume? What's good? What's on the table right now?
Wow. Oh boy, that's a tough question. Well, I'll tell you what I'm currently, because my youngest is 14. There's a bunch of stuff she hasn't seen, so we try to take turns. She goes, she kind of indoctrinates me into the things she likes to watch, and then I, in turn, try and find things that I've liked over the years that I think she might like. And we're actually going through the Cumberbatch Sherlock's right now.
I have had it on my list for years, and
We've never seen it. Oh, are you?
I started A Study in Pink, and I fell asleep. I woke up, and all my friends were gone. They went home.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if there was drinking involved in that, but
there wasn't.
But
I know he's good, though.
Oh my God! Look, that show, and I've worked with a couple of the directors, and it's when it's great, it's really great. Like the brilliant episodes are just magic to watch. Like, it's like,
okay,
I'm jealous. I mean, there's a couple of misses in there, but I'm not gonna.
Not bad for 8 or 9 shows.
Fantastic. So yeah, really enjoy that. what else have I watched recently that I've loved? I mean, I have a kind of eclectic taste, and I also, frankly, to be honest with you, watch a lot of sports and cooking shows.
Well, good for you. Absolutely.
But also because it's like, it's just easier on my brain, like when I watch something that's good, that's great. But when I watch something that I find it's just frustrating, to see stuff out there that's, uh, maybe I'm old fashioned and it's like not like the good old days.
Well, I mean, one of the questions that I skipped over asking you because we kind of just went a different direction was, I imagine there's some writers out there who believe in writing what you know and what it is that you consume, and then there's others who could probably watch Judge Judy and then go work on a film noir script.
Right. I did just finish season 3 of Sex Education, which I absolutely loved.
Okay.
On Netflix. I'm
That's Asa Butterfield's show, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. It really, it took a genre and really pushed it to a place that that genre had never gone before in a way that I felt needed to happen, and spoke to a generation in a way that hadn't been spoken to, that they hadn't been spoken to before, and just did it with such talent and class and humor and sensitivity. It's really well done.
Did you see Tales from the Loop?
No, I haven't.
It's beautiful. It's like 2 parts. It's 1 part beautiful, 1 part awe, and 1 part sad. And it really took me aback. It's just like the impressionist. It's not so much impressionist work. It's based on paintings from the 1960s of like this retro future. It's fantastic. It's 8 episodes, limited series, so highly recommend it.
Cool. I'll check that out.
My friend, thank you so much for joining me once again. As always, this is terrific. I had fun. We had a great time, and I look forward to having you back on later this year.
Thank you very much for continuing to have me, and thank you to everyone who wrote in and asked questions. And if we didn't get to them, maybe we can get to some of them next time. But thanks for continuing to engage with the show, and yeah, appreciate it.
My thanks once again to Robert C. Cooper for joining us on this episode. He's always terrific to sit down and talk with. He's just insightful, and his stories are always great. Dial the Gate is brought to you every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. If you want to support the show further, consider buying yourself some of our themed swag. The holidays are coming up. We're now offering t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages, as well as mugs and other accessories in a variety of sizes and colors at My Spread Shop. Click on a specific design to see what items are being offered. Checkout is fast and easy. Just visit dialthegate.myspreadshop.com, and thanks so much for your support. This episode is pre-recorded, so I don't have a specific lineup for you ready to go at this point. So keep an eye on social media and everything else that's happening. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider hitting that like button. It does make a difference with YouTube's algorithm and helps the audience grow. We're almost at 20,000 users now, and that's all thanks to you guys sharing the show and enjoying it. If you think there's a Stargate friend out there who will enjoy the show, please consider sharing it with them as well. My thanks to producer Linda Gategabber Fury, as well as my moderating team, Summer, Tracy, Keith, Jeremy, Reese, Anthony, and big thanks to Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web. He is our web developer on Dial the Gate, who's making the new website possible. Dial the Gate's now available on Apple and Google Podcasts, so there's about a week delay there because this is the main source for the show, so I want to give everyone a chance to come here first, and then it'll be picked up on iTunes. So that's another way to enjoy the show now. One of the things that people are going to notice is that some of the episodes are missing on iTunes and the podcast catchers is because those episodes are the ones that featured artwork. So it was all visual. So there was nothing really to say. So I wasn't going to upload those. anyhow. So you may notice those holes in the numbers, and that's why. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the other side.